It was just a one-night stand. It was cold, and Anya Rossi was lonely. Her body needed comfort. When he walked into the restaurant where she worked as a waitress and made advances, she told herself it didn't mean anything. She didn't ask for his last name, and he didn't ask for hers. They shared one night of warmth, and by morning he was gone. Anya never thought she'd see him again. But 2 months later, everything changed because she was carrying his triplets. You are welcome to Chetnal's Stories, where stories touch the heart and brighten the soul. Anya Rossi, 28, had been working double shifts at Chen's family restaurant for 3 years, saving every penny to help her younger brother Leo through college. After their parents' sudden death in a car accident, Enya had learned quickly that life doesn't pause for grief. Someone had to hold things together, and she had stepped into that role without hesitation. Sacrifice had become second nature. That's why when her best friend Chloe insisted she take a night off, Anya resisted. "I can't afford to waste money on parties," she said, stacking dishes at the sink. Chloe rolled her eyes. "It's not a party. It's a gala. I'm working it, and I scored you a ticket. No cost, no excuses. You need one night to remember you're alive," which was how Anya found herself standing beneath the glittering chandeliers of the Grand Marlowe Hotel, feeling like an imposter in a borrowed midnight blue dress. The air smelled faintly of roses and expensive perfume. Laughter rippled across the room, smooth and confident. She tugged at the hem of her dress, wishing she could disappear into the wallpaper. At the bar, she ordered water, cheaper than champagne, and something to hold in her nervous hands. That's when she noticed him. A man in his 30s, sharp in a tailored suit, but leaning against the counter with the same restless discomfort she felt. His tie was loosened, his drink untouched. Their eyes met briefly. He offered a small, almost conspiratorial smile. "You don't look like you want to be here," Anya said before she could stop herself. He chuckled low and genuine. "Is it that obvious?" And just like that, the noise of the gala faded. Conversation flowed between them as though they had known each other for years. He introduced himself simply as Elias. No last name, no business talk. Anya didn't press. She was too caught up in the ease of his company. They shared stories. Her dream of opening a bakery one day. His love of old Jimmy Stewart movies. Their mutual ache of losing parents too soon. His eyes softened when she spoke about her brother. Her laughter surprised her when he told a clumsy story about nearly burning down his college dorm trying to cook pasta. Hours passed unnoticed. When the event ended, Elias insisted on walking her home. The city streets glowed under amber lamplight, their footsteps falling in rhythm. At her door, hesitation turned into closeness into something deeper. He was gentle, attentive, more real than anyone she'd met in years. In the morning, sunlight streamed through her curtains. The bed was empty. On the nightstand, a folded note rested neatly. "Thank you for the most honest conversation I've had in years." No phone number. No last name, just Elias. Despite Chloe's determined attempts to comb through guest lists, he seemed to have vanished into the city like a dream she wasn't meant to hold on to. But the memory of that night lingered, warm, fragile and unforgettable. The first signs came quietly. Anya thought it was nothing more than exhaustion from too many shifts. Chen's always needed extra hands, and she was the kind of worker who never said no. The dizziness, the nausea, the bone-deep fatigue all seemed like familiar companions. But when the nausea became relentless, when even the smell of coffee sent her running to the bathroom, she could no longer ignore it. She bought a test from the pharmacy on the corner, carrying the small bag home like it weighed more than a week's worth of groceries. The tiny plastic stick changed her entire life in 3 minutes. Pregnant, Anya sat on the edge of her bathtub, staring at the word as if it might rearrange itself into something else. Her heart pounded. Her hands shook. Pregnant, the reality hit in waves. One night, one man she barely knew, Elias, she could still hear his laugh, see the way his eyes softened when he spoke about his mother. But he had vanished without leaving a trail. No last name, no number, no way to find him. Tears pricked her eyes. "It's okay," she whispered to herself. "I'll figure this out." I always do. The first Doctor's appointment confirmed what the test had already shouted at her, but the second ultrasound changed everything again. The room was dim, the air humming with the sound of the machine. Enya's stomach was slick with cold gel as the technician guided the probe across her. "Belly, there's the heartbeat," the technician said cheerfully. Then she frowned slightly. "And there's another," Anya blinked. "Another?" The woman's smile widened. "Actually, there are 3. Anya's breath caught. "3 babies? Triplets?" The technician confirmed, turning the screen so Anya could see. 3 tiny flickers of life. 3 steady heartbeats. The world tilted. Anya clutched the paper sheet beneath her, her voice trembling. "That can't be right. I can't. 3 alone." The technician's smile was sympathetic. "It's rare, but it happens. Congratulations, Mama." Anya barely remembered the bus ride home. Her hands stayed pressed against her stomach the entire way, as if cradling a future she couldn't yet comprehend. The pregnancy became a storm she wasn't prepared for. Morning sickness wasn't just mornings. It was all day, unpredictable, merciless. She vomited in the Chen's staff bathroom more times than she could count. Her uniform hung looser around her shoulders, even as her belly grew tighter by the week. Her boss, Mr. Chen, was kind but firm. "Anya, you need to take care of yourself. Cut back on shifts." "I can't," she said quickly. "I need the hours." But eventually her body made the choice for her. The dizziness grew dangerous, the nausea unbearable. She fainted once while carrying a tray, plates shattering across the floor. After that, Mr. Chen insisted she go part-time. Her income shrank overnight. At home, her studio apartment suddenly felt like a prison. The single bed, the cracked linoleum, the tiny stove. None of it looked fit for 1 baby, let alone 3. She sat on the couch some nights, staring at the peeling wallpaper, whispering, "Where will you sleep? How will I feed you?" Her younger brother, Leo, was the first person she told. He was 20, drowning in textbooks and exams. But when she showed him the ultrasound photo, his jaw dropped. "Triplets, Anya, that's impossible." "I know," her voice cracked. He hugged her tight. "We'll figure it out. You took care of me when Mom and Dad died. Now it's my turn to take care of you." But she could see the fear in his eyes. He was barely scraping by himself. How could he possibly carry her, too? Her friends rallied around her with well-meaning advice. Some suggested adoption. Others whispered about government programs. But none of them understood, the weight pressing down on her chest every time she felt the baby's kick. These were hers. She'd already lost so much. Her parents, her sense of youth, even her dreams. She wouldn't lose them too. Still, reality was merciless. Rent, groceries, prenatal vitamins. Everything added up faster than her tips. She started taking on catering gigs on top of her reduced restaurant hours, ignoring her doctor's warnings about overexertion. Some nights, she fell asleep sitting upright at the kitchen table, her swollen feet resting in a basin of cold water. One night, after a brutal double shift, she sat on her bed with her hands cradling her belly. The babies kicked in response, 3 tiny reminders of the storm ahead. Tears filled her eyes. "You don't have a father?" she whispered, voice shaking. "But you have me. I'll love you enough for 2 parents. For 3, for however many you need." Her voice steadied. "I promise you'll never know what it feels like to be abandoned. I promise I'll fight for you, even if it kills me." And in that tiny, cramped apartment, Anya made a vow to her children. A vow that would shape every decision she made in the months to come. Days turned into weeks, and with every calendar page that flipped, the reality of Anya's situation pressed down harder. The numbers never added up. Rent on her studio ate half of her paycheck. The remaining half went to groceries, utilities, and Leo's college expenses. She had been proud of keeping him in school after their parents' deaths. But now, with the weight of 3 new lives inside her, she wondered if she'd made a mistake. At night, she sat at the chipped kitchen table with a calculator, bills spread like battlefield maps. Her hands trembled as she scribbled figures in the margins of an old notebook. No matter how she added or subtracted, the totals mocked her. Sometimes she skipped meals, so Leo wouldn't notice the groceries disappearing faster. "I'm just not hungry," she'd tell him, forcing a smile. But the truth was simple. Every dollar saved mattered. Every penny tucked away in her baby jar felt like one more small shield against the impossible storm. To make ends meet, Anya accepted jobs nobody else wanted. A neighbor paid her a few dollars a week to clean apartments on the weekends. She spent long evenings folding laundry for busy mothers in her building, her swollen belly pressing against the basket. One catering company began calling her regularly. It was hard work hauling trays, cleaning up after glamorous parties she could never attend as a guest. But the pay was better than the restaurant. She often came home after midnight, her back screaming, ankles swollen. But she'd slip the envelope of cash into her jar and whisper to herself, "That's another week of diapers, another box of formula." Even on nights when exhaustion pinned her to the mattress, she pressed her hand against her belly, waiting for the familiar flutter. "You're fighters just like me," she whispered. "Three little miracles. I don't know how I'll do this, but I will. I swear I will." Her bond with the babies grew stronger as her body changed. The first kick startled her so much she dropped the mug she was holding. Later she laughed through tears, whispering, "Was that you, Isla, or you, Clara, or you, Noah?" She had no idea where the names came from, but they felt right. Like the babies themselves whispered them into her heart. She began talking to them constantly. While stirring soup on the stove, she'd say, "This is your mama's favorite recipe." While walking home late at night, she'd murmur, "Don't worry, I'll always get us home safe." Her neighbors sometimes overheard her, through the thin apartment walls, chuckling about the crazy pregnant girl who talks to her belly. But Anya didn't care. Talking to her babies kept her sane. The hardest nights were the quiet ones. When Leo was at the library and the apartment felt too still, fear crept in. She'd sit cross-legged on the floor with the ultrasound photo in her lap, tracing the tiny forms with her finger. What if I fail them? What if I can't afford rent? What if I get too sick to work? But then, as if sensing her spiraling thoughts, one of the babies would kick, a firm little thump against her ribs. She'd laugh through her tears. Okay, message received. I'll stop doubting. You trust me, don't you?" In those moments, Anya wasn't just a struggling waitress. She was their mother, their protector, their world. Still, the strain grew visible. Her uniforms no longer fit, so she patched them with cheap fabric. Some customers at the restaurant glanced at her belly with judgmental stares. Others whispered behind her back, assuming the worst about a young woman pregnant with 3 children. Once, after a particularly grueling shift, she overheard 2 co-workers whispering in the locker room. "How's she going to raise 3 kids? She can barely afford rent." Maybe she should have thought about that before opening her legs. Anya slipped into the bathroom and locked the stall. Hands pressed over her belly as tears streamed down her face. "Don't listen to them," she whispered fiercely to her unborn children. "You're not mistakes, you're blessings, and I'll prove it to the world." As the months dragged on, the stress began to affect her health. Her doctor frowned during appointments. "Anya, you need to slow down," the woman urged. "Triplets are high-risk pregnancies. You're pushing yourself too hard." "I don't have a choice," Anya replied quietly. "If I don't work, we don't eat," the doctor sighed, scribbling notes. "At least promise me you'll listen to your body. Rest when you can. Eat regularly. These babies need you strong." Anya nodded, though she knew rest was a luxury she couldn't afford. One evening, after a brutal catering shift, Anya limped into her apartment, dropped her bag on the floor, and collapsed onto the couch. The envelope of cash sat heavy in her pocket, but her body felt broken. She rubbed her belly gently. "We're almost there. Just a little longer. One day, I'll tell you about this, about how hard Mama worked before you came. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand how much I loved you before I even saw your faces." The babies kicked in response, and for the first time all week, Anya smiled. She was terrified. She was exhausted, but she wasn't alone anymore. She carried 3 tiny miracles inside her, and she was determined to give them a world better than the one she'd inherited. By the 7th month, every movement felt like a battle. Anya's body was stretched beyond what she thought possible. Her back ached, her feet swelled, and even breathing felt like work. Her doctor had ordered bed rest weeks ago, but bed rest didn't pay rent. Bed rest didn't keep the lights on. Bed rest didn't prepare for 3 cribs, 3 car seats, 3 of everything. So when the catering company called, offering double pay for a private event at the downtown Grand Sterling Hotel, she said yes, even though just getting dressed felt like climbing a mountain. The ballroom shimmered with golden light that night. Crystal chandeliers cast glitter across marble floors, while violins played softly in the background. Guests floated in designer gowns and sleek tuxedos, laughter and champagne bubbling in equal measure. Anya, in her black and white catering uniform, tried to make herself invisible. She balanced a silver tray of hors d'oeuvres, her swollen belly brushing against the edge of the counter every time she turned. Each step sent a sharp ache through her lower back, but she forced a polite smile as she passed through the crowd. Just get through the night, she told herself. Smile, serve, collect the envelope. Halfway across the room, a sound cut through the music and chatter. A laugh, warm, rich, unmistakable. Anya froze, her tray tilted slightly in her hands. That sound, it lived in her memory. Slowly, she turned, and there he was, Elias. Her breath caught. He stood across the ballroom, surrounded by a cluster of politicians and investors. The spotlight glinted off his dark hair and perfectly tailored suit. He looked older somehow, more polished than the man who had walked her home months ago. But it was him, no doubt. And then reality hit harder. The glossy magazine covers in the hotel lobby, the whispers she had overheard from other staff. Elias Vance, billionaire tech entrepreneur, founder of Vance Connect. Her Elias wasn't just Elias, he was Elias Vance. Her knees wobbled. She grabbed a nearby chair for balance, her tray rattling as her vision blurred. The room felt like it was tilting, closing in. Across the room, Elias laughed politely at a joke, but something pulled his gaze toward the servers, and then his eyes landed on her. Anya! His face drained of color. For a moment he didn't move. He just stared, as if he couldn't trust what he was seeing. Then, excusing himself from the group, he crossed the room with deliberate steps, his eyes never leaving hers. Anya's heart pounded. She wanted to run, but her swollen belly held her still. Her hands tightened around the tray until her knuckles turned white. He stopped a foot, away, his voice low, almost reverent. Anya, her throat closed. She hadn't heard her name spoken like that in months. Soft, gentle, filled with recognition. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Instead, she instinctively placed her hands over her belly, protectively shielding the curve of her stomach. His eyes followed the movement. Shock rippled across his face. His gaze flicked from her belly back to her eyes, filled now with disbelief and something dangerously close to fear. You're pregnant, he whispered. Anya's breath hitched. I didn't plan. She stopped herself. No explanation would be enough in this glittering ballroom full of strangers. Her vision swam, her body trembling from more than nerves. Suddenly a sharp cramp twisted her stomach. The tray slipped from her fingers, hors d'oeuvres tumbling onto the marble floor. Anya! Elias caught her arm as her knees buckled. Someone get a chair! Another server rushed over, panic on her face. She needs help. She's pregnant. The crowd buzzed, curious eyes turning toward the commotion. Don't just stand there, Elias barked, his polished businessman's voice cutting through the noise. Call an ambulance now. The ride to the hospital blurred together. Anya half sat, half lay against the seat, her breathing shallow, one hand clutching her belly, the other gripping the door handle. Elias sat beside her, his hand hovering protectively near hers, as if afraid to touch, but unable to let go. At the hospital, doctors rushed her through triage. After tense minutes, they confirmed it was false labor brought on by stress. Relief flooded Anya, though her body still trembled with aftershocks. When the nurses finally left, she turned to find Elias sitting by her bed, his suit jacket discarded, his tie loosened. His face, always so composed in the magazines, was raw, stripped of all pretense. Anya, he said quietly, why didn't you tell me? She swallowed hard, her throat dry. How could I? I didn't even know your last name. You disappeared. You were just Elias to me. His eyes flickered with regret. I tried to find you. I only knew your first name. I searched restaurants, event staff lists. I thought about you every day. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe this wasn't just convenient timing, but fear gnawed at her. He looked at her belly, then back at her. They're mine, aren't they? She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, all three. His hands trembled slightly as he rubbed his face. 3? He let out a shaky laugh somewhere between disbelief and awe. I guess fate doesn't do things halfway. Anya's chest tightened. Listen, I don't want your money. I'm not after... His voice cut her off, firm but gentle. Anya, stop. This isn't about money. I want to be part of their lives. Not just as a provider, as their father. For the first time in months, Anya let herself look at him. Not the billionaire, not the man on magazine covers, but the Elias she'd once walked home with under the city lights. His eyes carried the same gentleness, the same truth. Her own eyes welled with tears. I don't know if I can trust this, she whispered. I've been alone for so long. I don't know if I can trust you. Elias leaned forward, his voice steady. Then let me prove it. Let me earn it one day at a time. And for the first time since her pregnancy began, Anya felt something stronger than fear flicker inside her. It was hope. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Anya lay against the stiff white pillows, her body drained from the scare. The contractions had stopped, but the memory of pain still lingered like a shadow. She pressed her hand over her belly, feeling the faint shifts of her babies, silently promising them she wouldn't let stress break her again. Across the room, Elias sat in a chair that looked far too small for him. His suit jacket was folded over the armrest, his tie pulled loose, his polished exterior unraveling. For once, he didn't look like the man whose face appeared on magazine covers. He looked human, tired, shaken, and terrified. False labor, the doctor had said, brought on by stress and exhaustion. But with triplets, we need to monitor closely. She needs rest. Real rest. Anya had nodded, even though rest felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Elias had simply stared at her, his jaw set as though memorizing every word. Now as the silence stretched, he finally spoke. You've been carrying all of this alone. His voice was low, but there was an edge to it. Anger, maybe, but not at her. Anya shifted uncomfortably. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did, he said, leaning forward. His eyes searched hers, intense and unflinching. You could have given them up. You could have walked away. But you didn't. You chose to fight for them. Alone, his words pierced. Something inside her. She looked away, blinking back tears. Don't make me sound noble. I just couldn't. They're all I have. They're ours, he corrected gently. The word ours sent a ripple through her chest. She wanted to believe it, but fear tugged at her again. You don't understand, she whispered. People will think I trapped you, that I planned this, that I... Anya, his voice softened. I know you didn't. I was there that night. It wasn't about money or status. It was about us, and I haven't felt that real in years. Her throat tightened. She remembered the honesty of that night, how she had spoken to him like he was just a man, not a mystery or a fortune. And now here he was, offering himself not as Elias Vance, billionaire, but as Elias, the man who had listened to her dreams of a bakery and laughed at her bad jokes. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Elias refused to step aside even when Anya resisted. He arranged for her to see one of the city's best obstetricians, insisting no more catering jobs, no more fainting in hotel ballrooms. You deserve better than that. I can't just quit, Anya argued in the doctor's office. You need to be alive for them, Elias said firmly, nodding at her belly. It became a tug of war, her fierce independence against his relentless determination to help. When he offered to move her into one of his penthouses, she refused flatly. I'm not a charity case. Elias, I won't let you buy me. His jaw tightened. This isn't charity. This is responsibility, but still, she wouldn't bend. Instead, they compromised. He began covering her medical bills, but she stayed in her apartment. He sent healthy groceries through delivery services, which she often tried to send back until Leo convinced her otherwise. Anya? Swallow your pride, Leo said one evening as he unpacked cartons of fresh produce. He's not just throwing money at you, he's trying. Don't shut him out. Anya sat at the kitchen table, her hands resting on her belly, torn between gratitude and fear. What if he changes his mind? What if one day he decides this is too much? Leo looked at her with steady eyes. Then at least you'll know he tried. But don't punish him for wanting to be a father. In rare, quiet moments, Elias told her about his own childhood. How his father had left when he was 5. How his mother worked night shifts cleaning offices just to keep food on the table. She used to come home with her hands raw from bleach, Elias said one night, sitting across from her in her small living room. But she never let me feel poor. She made me believe I could be anything. She's the reason I built what I did. Anya watched him, surprised by the vulnerability in his voice. She sounds like she was strong. She was, Elias said, his eyes meeting hers. And now I see that same strength in you. The words lodged in her heart, warming something she had long buried. Lawyers entered the picture soon after. Papers to sign, paternity acknowledgements, agreements about custody and support. Anya hated the sterile conference rooms and the way the attorneys spoke in numbers and percentages, as if her babies were assets to be divided, but Elias stayed by her side, ignoring the business-like tone. When one lawyer asked if he wanted sole custody, Elias cut him off sharply. "No," he said. "This isn't about control. This is about family. They need their mother." Anya's eyes stung. For the first time, she let herself believe he wasn't just a billionaire playing savior. He was a man who wanted to be a father. Still, trust didn't come easy. Each time he bought something, prenatal vitamins, a maternity pillow, even a pair of comfortable shoes, Anya bristled. "I don't want your guilt money." She snapped once after finding new groceries on her doorstep. Elias exhaled slowly, his voice steady. "This isn't guilt. This is me showing up. If you can't accept that yet, fine. But I'm not going anywhere." And he didn't. Day by day, step by step, Elias began weaving himself into the fabric of her chaotic, fragile world. Anya, who had carried everything alone for so long, began to feel something new stirring in her heart. Not complete trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. And possibility was enough to carry her through the final weeks of her pregnancy. The call came on an ordinary morning, just as the city started to wake. Anya had been making tea in her tiny kitchen when the first wave hit. Sharp, sudden, and unmistakable. She doubled over, clutching her belly, breath stolen by the pain. Her phone slipped from her hands as she tried to call Leo. The contractions were early, too early. She was only 34 weeks. Panic surged through her. By the time she reached the hospital, her contractions were minutes apart. Nurses rushed her into a delivery room, their voices brisk and urgent. "Premature labor. We need to monitor the babies closely." Through the haze of pain, one thought echoed, Elias isn't here. He was thousands of miles away in Singapore, leading a board meeting. She hadn't wanted to call him. She didn't want to depend on him. Didn't want to be the woman who interrupted. Billion-dollar deals with a personal crisis. But as another contraction ripped through her, she screamed his name in her head. Elias answered his phone in the middle of the meeting, ignoring the disapproving stares of his executives. When the words, "Anya is in labor," reached his ears, he didn't hesitate. He left the room without explanation, already dialing his pilot. By the time his jet touched down hours later, Anya was being wheeled into the operating room for an emergency C-section. He sprinted through the sterile corridors, his chest burning, heart pounding harder than it ever had in his life. "Anya!" he shouted just as the double doors closed. A nurse stopped him. "Sir, you can't go in yet." He pressed his forehead to the cold wall, whispering prayers he hadn't uttered since childhood. "Please, please let them be okay." The world blurred into monitors, beeping machines and hushed voices. And then 3 cries filled the air, small, fragile, but fierce. Isla, Clara, Noah, each barely 4 pounds, each whisked immediately to the NICU. Anya, pale and trembling, reached out for Elias when they finally let him in. His hand closed around hers, and for the first time, she saw tears in his eyes. "They're here," he whispered. "They're so small, but they're here." Anya's lips trembled. "Are they okay?" Elias bent down, pressing his forehead to hers. "They're fighters, just like their mother." The weeks that followed in the NICU tested them, both in ways they hadn't imagined. Machines beeped endlessly. Tiny incubators glowed softly. in the dim light, holding the babies in delicate cocoons. Doctors and nurses spoke in a language of numbers and charts. Each fluctuation in weight or oxygen saturation felt like a difficult climb. Anya spent hours with her hands pressed through the incubator holes, stroking tiny fingers. She whispered lullabies her mother had sung, her voice breaking, but steady enough for the babies to hear her love. Elias was there too, always there. He traded boardrooms for hospital chairs. When the babies were finally strong enough to come home, Elias made a decision that stunned her. Elias sold his penthouse and bought a family home so the babies could grow up in a real community. Though life was tough, he stayed by Anya's side, reminding her it wasn't charity but love, until she finally believed him. Months passed and love blossomed in the small, ordinary moments. Elias learning to cook her grandmother's tamale recipe, flour dusting his expensive shirt, Anya laughing as he burned the first batch, but tried again anyway. The babies babbling as he made silly faces, their laughter filling the kitchen. One evening, as the sun set in shades of gold, Elias knelt in the backyard while the triplets napped inside. His voice shook as he pulled out a simple ring. "I don't want to marry you because it looks good in the papers," he said. "I want to marry you because when I read Goodnight Moon at 3 a.m., there's no one else I want sitting beside me. Because when you laugh, the world feels less heavy. Because you're the only one who's ever seen me. Not the billionaire, not the businessman, just Elias." Anya's eyes filled with tears. She had once promised herself she would never marry for anything but love. And here it was, raw and unpolished, standing in front of her with a trembling smile. She said yes. A year later, the backyard of their home buzzed with laughter and the smell of barbecue. Neighbors, friends, and family gathered for the triplets' first birthday. Bright balloons swayed in the summer breeze. Udla, Clara, and Noah toddled uncertainly on the grass, wobbly legs, carrying them toward Leo, who had just graduated college thanks to a scholarship Elias's foundation had quietly provided. Anya stood on the porch watching it all. Elias was at the swing set, pushing Noah higher, his laughter booming as the baby squealed in delight. For once, the tables hadn't intruded. For once, it was just them. Real, messy, ordinary, perfect. A reporter might have called it a fairy tale. But Anya knew the truth. This wasn't magic. It was built. It was earned through sleepless nights, through honest conversations, through the daily choice to keep fighting for each other. And tomorrow, when the bakery opened, her bakery, funded not by Elias's wealth, but by a loan she'd earned, with her hard work and his mentorship, she'd show her children that dreams could survive, even the hardest storms. Anya smiled, whispering to herself as the triplets stumbled into her arms. Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the most ordinary nights. The bakery bell jingled as another customer left, cradling a white box stamped with golden lettering. 3 Little Miracles Bakery. 5 years later, the little bakery on the corner buzzed with life. Its sign read, 3 Little Miracles, a nod to the children who had changed everything. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and fresh bread filled the air while Itla, Clara, and Noah giggled between tables. Elias sat with Noah at the back, coloring a sky purple just because his son insisted, while Anya worked the counter, her apron dusted with flour. Their eyes met, and he smiled the same way he had that first night. Only now it was fuller, rooted in years of love and trust. They weren't living a fairy tale. They were living something better, something real. And that was their happily ever after. Indeed, love isn't perfection. It's about shared laughter, messy aprons, and coloring skies purple just because. It's in the quiet smiles, the trust built over time, and the joy of living something real together. That's the true happily ever after. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in our next video.